They were built in countries with brutal winters, tiny farms, and almost no oil of their own. Yet Scandinavia quietly produced some of the cleverest tractors the world never talks about. One was welded from leftover cannon barrels. One ran a turbocharger before almost anyone in Europe dared. One was the only tractor an entire nation ever built for itself. 10 machines, 3 countries, decades of forgotten genius. Let's count them down, starting at number 10. Number 10. Bukh D-30, Denmark. Start in Denmark, because Denmark barely belongs on this list at all. And that's exactly what makes the Bukh so remarkable. For most of the 20th century, Danish farmers bought their tractors from abroad. Fordson from Britain, Ferguson, later Massey. Denmark had no real tractor industry of its own, except for one stubborn engine, works in the village of Hof. The Bukh company had been around since 1904, founded by Jens Bukh, and its reputation was built on one thing: diesel engines, tough enough to survive at sea. Bukh marine engines powered fishing boats and, later, lifeboats, motors that had to start on the first try in freezing water because lives depended on it. When Bukh turned that same marine-grade engineering toward farm tractors in the years after the Second World War, the result was a machine with a reputation for near indestructibility. The D-30 is the one enthusiasts remember. Powered by a compact 2-cylinder Bukh diesel, it was never fast and never flashy. What it was overbuilt. This was an engine designed to run for decades in a boat hull with minimal maintenance, now bolted into a tractor frame. The famous Bukh coupling on some models even let the power takeoff run independently of the tractor's forward motion, a genuinely useful feature at a time when many rivals still tied the PTO directly to the clutch. Bukh built complete tractors only until 1968, and never in large numbers. The company always prioritized quality over quantity, and it never really marketed the tractors outside Scandinavia. A Bukh in Britain or Ireland is a genuine head-turner at a vintage show. That rarity is why it opens our list. It's the tractor that proves a tiny marine engine maker could out-engineer far bigger names. And here's the kicker: Bukh is still in business today, still building diesel engines, the very lifeboat motors that started it all. The tractors are gone, but the toughness lives on. Number 9. Volvo T41, Sweden. Number 9 is the tractor that only exists because Volvo couldn't sell cars. Rewind to the early 1940s. The Second World War had strangled the European car market. Volvo, founded in 1927 as a car maker, suddenly had factories and no customers. So in 1943, the company made a decision that shaped Swedish farming for the next 40 years. It went into the tractor business. The very first Volvo-branded tractor was the T41. What makes the T41 brilliant isn't raw performance, it's the marriage at its heart. Volvo already knew how to build engines. What it lacked was tractor-specific gearing. The answer was a partnership with Bolinder-Munktell, the established Swedish tractor maker in Eskilstuna. The T41 paired a Volvo engine with a BM transmission, producing around 40 horsepower in a machine weighing roughly 2.5 tons. It was a car company's engineering discipline dropped into an agricultural machine, and farmers noticed the difference in refinement. That partnership is the whole story of Swedish tractors in miniature. Volvo and Bolinder-Munktell cooperated so closely on tractors from 1943 onward that in 1950 Volvo simply bought BM outright. For years afterward, the same basic tractor would roll out of Eskilstuna in 2 colors: dark green if it wore the Bolinder-Munktell badge, red if it wore the Volvo one, a quirk we'll come back to. The T41 rarely gets celebrated because it was a beginning rather than a peak, and beginnings get forgotten. But without this wartime pivot, there would be no Volvo BM tractor dynasty, no Boxer, no Bison, none of the machines further up this list. It's the humble founding father of an entire branch of Scandinavian farming, born purely because a car maker needed something to build when nobody was buying cars. That's not desperation, that's brilliant improvisation. Number 8. Bolinder-Munktell BM425, Terrier, Sweden. Number 8 looks at a glance like just another small green Swedish tractor from the late 1950s. Look closer and you find a machine that was quietly ahead of its rivals, and a perfect example of Sweden's strangest tractor tradition. The BM425 Terrier arrived in 1957 to replace the older BM15, and it carried a Volvo B16 C4-cylinder petrol engine. Here's the clever part. The Terrier came with a differential lock as standard on the base model. That was genuinely unusual for the class and the era, and Bolinder-Munktell knew it. The company used it as a headline selling point. A diff lock lets both rear wheels turn together on demand. So instead of one wheel spinning helplessly in mud while the other sits still, the tractor claws its way forward. On soft Scandinavian ground and in wet fields, that feature earned its keep every single day. From 1961, the Terrier got even better, gaining a new 5-speed gearbox and Bolinder-Munktell's Terrier hydraulic system. Terrier was the company's implement control setup, and it was good enough that mounted implements no longer needed their own support wheels. The hydraulics managed depth automatically. But the Terrier's best trick is the one that confuses collectors to this day. Technically, it was the same tractor as the Volvo T41. The only real difference was the paint. Order it in dark green and it was a Bolinder-Munktell BM425 Terrier. Order the identical machine in red and it was a Volvo T41. Same factory, same design, 2 badges, 2 colors, a deliberate strategy to keep both brand names alive after Volvo swallowed BM. It's a small tractor with a small output, and outside the Nordic countries it's rare. Yet the Terrier packed standard traction control, modern hydraulics, and a slick gearbox into an affordable machine at a time when many competitors offered none of that. Forgotten almost entirely. Brilliant for its price and its purpose. Absolutely. Number 7. Valmet 33D, Finland. Now we cross to Finland, and to a design detail so clever that it defined a brand for the next 50 years. By the mid-1950s, Finland's young tractor maker, Valmet, had proven it could build small petrol machines. What it needed next was a proper diesel. In 1957, it delivered the Valmet 33D, powered by a 3-cylinder diesel of roughly 2.7 liters, producing about 37 horsepower. On paper, unremarkable. In the details, inspired. The 33D's stroke of genius was where Valmet put the fuel tank. Instead of perching it up high or hanging it off the side, the engineers tucked the fuel tank down low, between the clutch and the gearbox, right in the protected heart of the tractor's structure. This wasn't just tidy packaging. In a country where a huge share of tractor work happened in the forest, dragging logs over stumps, rocks, and frozen ruts, a low sheltered fuel tank was far less likely to be punctured or torn open. It also lowered the machine's center of gravity, which mattered on the slopes and uneven ground where these tractors earned their living. That tank position became such a defining Valmet feature that it carried through decade after decade of finished tractors, right into the modern Valtra era. One good idea, executed early, became a signature. The 33D also cemented something bigger. The engine came from Valmet's Linnavori works, and those engineers got the fundamentals so right. Wet cylinder liners, direct injection, a cross-flow head, that the basic concept survived, refined but not replaced for decades. Finnish farmers and foresters trusted these diesels the way Danish sailors trusted their Bukh marine engines, completely. The Valmet 33D almost never appears in glossy tractor histories, but look at any Valtra built since. Notice where the fuel goes, and you're looking at the legacy of a modest 3-cylinder diesel from 1957 that simply put the tank in a smarter place than anyone else bothered to. Number 6. Valmet 1502, Finland. Number 6 is the weirdest machine on this list, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. By the mid-1970s, Valmet had built a strong reputation on tough 4-cylinder tractors. But there was demand for something much bigger. And in 1975, Valmet answered with a machine unlike almost anything else in European farming, the Valmet 1502, a 6-wheeled bogie tractor producing around 136 horsepower. 6 wheels. Not the 4 you expect, not the tracks of a crawler, but 3 axles carrying 6 wheels, a tandem or bogie rear end. The thinking behind it was pure Nordic logic. Spread the tractor's considerable weight across more wheels and more ground contact, and you get flotation over soft terrain, better grip and less damage to fragile soil and forest floor. For heavy haulage and forestry-adjacent work in demanding conditions, a bogie tractor could go where a conventional machine would sink or slip. It was genuinely advanced and genuinely strange to look at. The 1502 was never a big seller. It was expensive, specialized, and its six-wheeled layout was more tractor than most farms needed. Commercially, you'd have to call it a flop. But among tractor enthusiasts, the 1502 became a legend precisely because it was so bold and so odd. It's the machine that proves Valmet's engineers weren't afraid to throw out the four-wheel rulebook when the terrain demanded it. There's a broader point here about Scandinavian tractor design. In flatter, drier farming countries, the priorities were horsepower and cost. In Finland and Sweden, land of forests, bogs, snow and thin soils, traction and flotation were often the real challenge. The six-wheeled 1502 is what happens when engineers optimize for that reality instead of copying everyone else. It didn't sell. It didn't need to. It's a forgotten machine that dared to be different, and it still turns heads at any show it appears, at half a century later. Number 5. Volvo BM425, Bison, Sweden. At number 5, we meet a tractor whose very name was a marketing promise, the Bison. By the early 1960s, the Swedish farm was getting bigger and hungrier for power. Bolinder-Munktell's answer, built on the excellent chassis family it had developed at the end of the 1950s, was the BM425 Bison. Where its stablemates offered 50-odd horsepower, the Bison pushed that to a remarkable 73 Swedish horsepower thanks to an upgraded version of the company's Bolinder diesel engine. That figure deserves context. In its day, the Bison was marketed as one of the most powerful tractors around. A heavyweight for farmers who needed to pull bigger plows through heavier ground, faster. In a market where much of the competition sat well below it, the Bison stood out as a genuine muscle machine of Northern European farming. What makes it brilliant, though, isn't just the horsepower, it's what that power sat on top of. The Bison shared its fundamental architecture with the wildly successful BM tractors of the era, which meant it inherited their strengths: a robust chassis, a well-proven independent power takeoff, the Terrier hydraulic system with combined depth and draft control, and the durability the brand was famous for. Buyers weren't paying for raw power bolted onto a flimsy frame. They were getting big output wrapped in the same tough, well-sorted engineering that made the smaller models so trusted. The Bison also shows how deep the Volvo Bolinder-Munktell family tree ran. This same generation of chassis didn't just make tractors, it underpinned an entire spread of construction and forestry machines that helped turn the company into a giant of heavy equipment. The farm tractor and the earth mower were, quite literally, close cousins. Today, the Bison is a collector's favorite in Sweden, but largely unknown elsewhere. It was the machine that told farmers Scandinavia could build serious power, not just tidy little utility tractors. And it delivered on that promise with a name you couldn't forget, even if history somehow did. Number 4. Valmet 900 Finland. Number 4 might be the most quietly important tractor on this entire list, because it's about protecting the person in the seat. In 1967, Valmet launched a brand new range and led with the Valmet 900. Almost everything about it was fresh. A new 4-cylinder diesel producing 89 horsepower, a fully synchronized transmission, and a bold new yellow paint scheme replacing the old red. But the headline feature was something farmers in harsher countries had been crying out for. The Valmet 900 came with a proper factory-fitted safety cab as standard equipment. To understand why that matters, remember what farming was like then. For decades, tractors were open machines. In a country like Finland, that meant operators working through bitter cold, wind and snow with nothing between them and the weather. Worse, an open tractor offers no protection if it rolls over, and tractor rollovers were and remain one of the deadliest hazards in all of agriculture. A strong integrated cab addresses both problems at once. It keeps the driver warm, and crucially, it can keep the driver alive. Valmet made that cab standard, not an expensive optional extra buried in a price list. The engineers even moved the gear levers to the right-hand side of the driver to free up cabin space and mounted the cab on rubber to cut down noise and vibration. This was ergonomics and safety thinking, years ahead of much of the industry, driven by the simple reality that Nordic farmers spent long, cold hours in the seat and deserved better. The safety cab as standard became a defining part of Valmet's identity, and the wider industry eventually followed the same path toward protecting operators. The Valmet 900 rarely gets the credit for being an early committed champion of that shift. It's remembered, if at all, as just another yellow Finnish tractor. In truth, it was a machine that treated the driver's comfort and survival as core features rather than luxuries. And that is exactly the kind of brilliance that saves lives without ever making headlines. Number 3. Valmet 15, Finland. We're into the top 3 now, and number 3 has the best origin story of any tractor you've never heard of. This one was, quite literally, forged from the tools of war. Picture Finland right after the Second World War. The country owed heavy war reparations. Its economy was strained, and its farms were small, exhausted, and desperately short of machinery. In 1951, the Finnish state grouped a collection of its factories, including former weapons plants, under one company, Valmet, short for the State Metalworks. And those factories decided to build a tractor. Here's the part that sounds made up but isn't. The very first Valmet tractors were assembled in a converted rifle factory in Jyväskylä. And the main structural member of the tractor, the backbone running between the clutch and the gearbox, was made from a heavy gun barrel, a cannon barrel, repurposed. Swords into plowshares wasn't a metaphor here, it was the bill of materials. A nation that had just been fighting for survival took the literal machinery of war and reforged it into a machine for growing food. The tractor itself was the Valmet 15, and it was deliberately, brilliantly modest. 15 horsepower. The model number told you the output. The design brief was simple: build something small, sturdy, and cheap enough to replace a pair of horses on a tiny Finnish farm. The first 10 machines went out to farms as working tests in 1951. They caused such a stir that Valmet built another 75 the following year, and demand exploded from there. That right size, right price judgment was the masterstroke. Across Europe, dozens of small tractor makers sprang up after the war, and most vanished. Valmet survived and thrived because it read its own market perfectly. Not a big machine for big estates, but a horse replacement for the small farmer who had nothing. From cannon barrels and a rifle factory grew a company that still builds tractors in Finland today, under the Valtra name. Every one of them traces its lineage to a 15-horsepower machine born of scarcity, ingenuity, and beaten swords. If that isn't brilliant, nothing on this list is. Number 2, Valmet 1100, Finland. At number 2, the tractor that helped bring turbocharging to European farming. By the late 1960s, farmers everywhere wanted more power without hauling around ever heavier engines. The elegant solution was the turbocharger, a device that uses the engine's own exhaust gases to force more air into the cylinders, letting it burn more fuel and make more power from the same size block. It was well understood in trucks and industry, but in tractors it was still rare and a little exotic. In 1969, Valmet put a turbocharger on its new flagship. The Valmet 1100 used a turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel, producing around 115 horsepower. A big muscular output for a Nordic tractor of that moment, and Valmet's own engine, developed in-house at Linnavori. It made the 1100 one of the earliest turbocharged tractors in Europe and a true pioneer of the technology in Scandinavian farming. Now a note of honesty, because getting the history right matters. Valmet was not the first company on earth to fit a turbo to a production tractor. That distinction belongs to the American Alice Chalmers D19, which arrived back in 1961 with a factory turbo diesel. What Valmet did was different and in its own way, just as important. It embraced turbocharging early and then committed to it hard, turning it into a signature of the brand. Valmet went on to develop turbocharged 3-cylinder tractor engines around 1980, spreading the technology down through its range, while many rivals were still cautious about it. The 1100 wasn't just a turbo either. It rode on the advanced platform of Valmet's new range. Factory cab on rubber mounts, hydrostatic steering, a fully synchronized gearbox, and strong hydraulics. It was a properly modern machine wrapped around a properly modern engine. Turbocharging is now so universal that virtually every serious tractor on the planet uses it. Nobody even thinks about it. But somebody had to be brave early, and in Europe's frozen north, Valmet was one of the bravest. The 1100 is the forgotten machine that helped make the turbo tractor normal. Number 2, and richly deserved. Number 1, Volvo BM350 Boxer, Sweden. And at number 1, the machine that more than any other deserves to be remembered as a masterpiece of Scandinavian farming, the Volvo BM350 Boxer. It launched in 1959, and the name told you its recipe: 3 for its 3 cylinders, 50 for its roughly 50 horsepower. But that plain naming hid an unusually complete piece of engineering. The Boxer used a purpose-built Bolinder 3-cylinder direct injection diesel of nearly 3.8 liters, replacing the old hot bulb engines of the previous generation with something thoroughly modern. Later versions pushed the power up further still. Then came the features, and this is where the Boxer pulled ahead of its class. It offered a fully independent power takeoff, so implements could keep running even when the tractor stopped moving. A genuine convenience that not everyone had mastered yet. It had a 10-speed gearbox, 10 forward and 2 reverse, giving the driver an unusually fine choice of gears for any job. It came with a differential lock, and from 1961, the Terrier hydraulic system that managed both working depth and draft load at once. For a 50-horsepower tractor in 1959, that was a seriously sophisticated package. Farmers loved it. Production struggled to keep up with demand. By the time it bowed out in 1967, the Boxer had sold 28,039 units, making it the single best-selling tractor Bolinder-Munktell ever built, and one of the defining machines of post-war Scandinavian agriculture. It came in specialist forms too: tricycle versions, tandems, and tall, narrow variants for working between rows of vines. But the Boxer's real brilliance is how far its influence spread beyond the field. That tough, well-designed chassis became the foundation for thousands of construction and forestry machines. Rear loaders, timber haulers, and the articulated hauler, nicknamed Gravel Charlie, that helped launch Volvo into the earth-moving business it dominates to this day. A humble farm tractor quietly seeded a global heavy equipment empire. The Boxer wore both badges of its era: green as a Bolinder-Munktell, red as a Volvo, and outsold everything around it while being technically better than most of it. It's the perfect closing act, forgotten by the wider world, treasured in Scandinavia, and brilliant in every sense that matters. Our number 1. Which of these 10 would you actually want in your barn? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed digging up this forgotten Nordic engineering, subscribe. There are far more brilliant machines where these came from.